What screams pretending to be upper class? I work at an exotic car rental branch. I have plenty of customers that rent our cars and ask us to take the tags off the keyring. Understandable. Then I have some that insist they get the same license plate each time and will flip out if I give them the same model as usual but with the plate one digit off. They're trying to make the appearance to whoever that they own the car and get themselves in a trap where they have to keep renting to keep up the illusion. That charade never lasts long. Putting entrepreneur on any social media platform bio. Talking about possessions. Slipping dollar amounts into conversations. Act like you've been there before. So you're saying I shouldn't brag about my favorite $7 boots that I bought at a thrift store? $5,000 purse with no money in it. McMansions without curtains or furniture in the upstairs. Throwing parties every week and calling everyone old sport. Pronouncing your name bouquet. Talking about how expensive everything you have is and how much money you have. I've found that truly wealthy people don't feel compelled to talk about it constantly. A friend of mine said that a woman she had to deal with would spend $20 on something worth $10 and then tell her she spent $30 on it. Getting married in a big fat wedding by taking out loans, borrowing from friends, plus getting super expensive rings when you can't afford 1/10 of it. My uncle and his wife are perfect examples. They bought a brand new Mercedes that they can't afford, live in a house that's too big for them, bought a caravan in a park where the ground rental is nearly $50,000 a year. They bought their kids expensive ass bikes that were never used, and what did they use to pay for all this? If you guessed credit cards, then you are correct. Credit cards and loans from my grandmother which they will never pay back. Then they make fun of my mother and I for being working class. Might as well spit on my grandfather's grave since he was working class through and through. Edit. I got the cost of the caravan rental wrong by $10,000. It's $5,000 for the ground rental and they rent the caravan from the site for $35,000. So the total is $40,000. This was my bad. And my grandmother actually cleared this up for me. Edit 2. As someone pointed out, this number is apparently sus. I'm just going off what I was told. Talking down to working class people. Don't get me wrong, there are definitely snooty asshole upper class people, however in my interactions with them as a working class person in services they've always been extremely nice. My guess is because we both know who we are in society, so there are no pretensions. Fake upper class people have to completely reinforce the class divide. It had to be absolutely clear that they are and always have been above you. Part of me thinks it's resentment at what they might have used to have been, and the other part thinks it's how they think other upper class people behave. I used to be concerned about how I looked dressed when going to a high-end retailer. Now I simply don't care. If they won't serve me when wearing jeans, then I'll just go somewhere else. You all work on commission, right? Big mistake. Huge. I have to go shopping now. Edit. Thank you so much for my first gold. Jeff Lowe. My boyfriend tried to convince me that if I bought a KitchenAid that we'd need to leave it on the counter so people would notice that we could afford to spend $250 on a kitchen appliance. I would love to have one, but I don't bake enough to justify it, and if I ever get one it's going to be stored when I'm not using it because I hate clutter on my counters. Edit. There seem to be a lot of comments disagreeing that $250 appliances aren't upper class. I think this is a matter of perspective. I grew up super poor. If I walked into someone's house and saw a $250 mixer that absolutely is not a basic necessity, I would assume that their family had considerably more money than mine did. Nothing wrong with it, but it's just my observation and opinion. I think it's interesting that people seem to be scoffing at the idea that this appliance isn't even that expensive. That big of a deal? How could it be a status symbol? Having that much extra money in America is a big deal for a lot of families. Edit 2. The boyfriend isn't as materialistic as this post makes him sound, I promise. He grew up poor too, and he thinks it's an art piece that should be displayed. But he also wouldn't buy one just for having it. He'd only buy it if he expected it to be used. Posting pictures of your fancy cars and house renovations, shoes, etc. on social media. Real rich people don't actually have to scream "I'm rich" to be rich. 20 dudes who pooled their money to pay for one bottle service table at a Vegas club. Source: was one of those dudes. My ex comes from a really, well, kinda fucked up family. Her dad is a multimillionaire who cheated on her mom and wound up leaving, and was by all accounts not a great husband, father, or man. But after he left, my ex's mom became a professional alimony hound. She never got a high school diploma and worked part-time as a hairdresser, but was a single mom in a house that must have been worth $1 million plus. It was clear based on the way she spoke that she was living paycheck to paycheck on gross child support and alimony checks, funding a lifestyle that would disappear completely if something happened to her ex-husband. Her home is the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. Multiple formal dining rooms, mismatched hardwood furniture everywhere. For some reason every TV is hidden in a closed closet, etc. But the weirdest fucking thing, is that there are no clocks in the house. 25 mirrors. There's not a spot in the home where you can't find your reflection, but you never know what time it is. I'm not sure if that's a direct answer to the question, but I thought it was related. I grew up in an upper class home and we drove second-hand Volvos from granddad. My mother was up to her eyebrows trying to get tax levies passed for school programs and the library and paint spattered clothes. My dad worked a 60+ hour work week providing low-cost healthcare. We thought Dolly Parton was the epitome of someone who was pretending to be upper class and we loved her every move. So here's a bit of a story. There was this smoking hot Colombian girl at work a few years ago who took a liking to me. We're talking an easy 10, possibly such a 10 that scale was altered such that former 10s have been downgraded to 8s in comparison. She was always perfectly made up, wearing business attire that was just enough to be sexy, without breaking dress code. But my chronometer was going off in a major way. Buried the needle. So I thought with my upper head and kept things professional. Well, seeing as how I wasn't falling for her, she turned her attention to some other guy, who kinda looked like me. Evidently she had a type, and he went in head first. It was hot and heavy, and she basically got her hooks in deep. Got him paying for everything. All her bills, rent, everything. After a few months when he could barely pay for his own stuff because he was supporting her, he got his shit together and broke things off. She had a minor meltdown at work, and ended up being let go a few days later. After the dust settled it became clear that she was the queen of the gold diggers. She supported a lavish lifestyle, a 5-bedroom house, a Mercedes and a BMW, expensive clothes and jewelry, etc. because she'd managed to bleed every guy she'd ever dated dry. My aunt has a house in a really expensive area of Dublin, D4. She speaks as if she was born in that posh area. However, we're from a shitty little village in the middle of nowhere in the middle of County Limerick. My uncle and father speak with the local accent. She and her children live off Aldi ready-made meals while she buys expensive designer clothes that spend most of her salary. She also gets my grandfather to pay her rent. Also her children don't always have shoes that fit them or even are a size too small. They're often tiny on them. Money talks, wealth whispers. I have always liked this saying. A lot of people with real substantial wealth, you don't hear about too much about it from them. I like these people. I heard salespeople at high-end shops can tell immediately if someone was actually wealthy in places like Rodeo Drive. Even if you dress up nicely and walk into a high-end store, they could pick you off as a normie. So my husband and I grew up in the same area with dads who made about the same amount of money, middle class, and stay-at-home moms. But our upbringings were very different. My husband's parents were terrible with money. They tried to look upper middle class. They made poor financial decisions trying, like refinancing their homes and using the money to buy new TVs and go on vacations they couldn't afford, eating out multiple times a week, never buying generic anything. Always shopping at Nordstrom and Macy's. As a result they are now penniless and living in the same home they bought in the 80s. Like, it's exactly the same as when they bought it, and my mill still doesn't understand how to be financially responsible. She takes cruises every year, and multiple trips to Disneyland. Meanwhile she is underwater on her home, almost 65 and has zero money put away for her retirement. On the other hand, my parents shopped second-hand, pinched every penny. Our vacations were camping trips. My mom saved money buying generic everything. Taught me how to grow our own food, patch clothes, cook meals at home instead of eating out. We had chickens and would sell their eggs to neighbors. My mom worked as a janitor on the weekend. They didn't care about appearances. They just put their heads down and planned for their future. They did refinance their home as well. But they always put the money back into the house, putting a new roof on it, turning the garage into a bonus room bedroom, building a large shop in the backyard, bumping out the dining room. As a result, the home they bought in the 80s is now beautiful and worth $500,000. They have investments and a large retirement. They have a lake house they spend the summer at. My dad could leave work anytime and they could live quite comfortably. Don't go broke trying to look like you aren't. Look broke while saving for your future. Brand new Escalade. 4 kids running around the convenience store with brand new iPhones. Pull out Ed card to pay for snacks. I've seen it too many times. Taking out loans to get your family on a little vacation. My friend is doing this. I told him to save up for a trip like that. Apparently stuff around the house is stressing both him and his so badly with their kids that they are fighting over taking out $20,000 or $30,000 to go on a vacation. One vacation. Then it's back to fighting and whatnot. Absurd. Imagine knowingly going into debt to go on one vacation. They both work too, which is even more baffling. When I sold cars for 5 years, the people with the worst credit income finances were always trying to stretch to buy the most expensive and newest car. They were the easiest to impress with new features, special colors and performance specifications. The people with the best finances were always looking for a basic Corolla or Camry. They were usually replacing a 15-year-old Toyota they handed down or sold online. After having that experience, whenever I hear someone say they special ordered a special color or that there's only X amount of this car made, I just think to myself that they are a sucker and probably have bad credit. And when I see someone driving an old beat up car, I don't automatically think they are broke, but instead I think they are probably hoarding cash and have a nice retirement ahead of them.